Okay, anyways, so we're going to be interviewing Sheila North, and we're going to be talking about the AFN election, the recent Assembly of First Nations election. Cindy Woodhouse was elected, and Sheila North was one of the candidates. So super excited to be talking to her today about it, and hoping this works better. TikTok. I had originally intended to do a live on TikTok, and then it didn't work. We were having technical difficulties, we'll say. So here's to hoping this works. You know what? Guest request. Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I saw all the shenanigan there on TikTok. The problem is I don't have 1,000 view for followers because I'm almost never on TikTok. But
I didn't
that's
even think of that. And like my first thought too was like, we're gonna help boost her account. We're gonna grow her numbers. She's gonna just be a TikTok star before you know it. And then I didn't even put that into consideration.
Oh wow. It's interesting. Maybe I'll get 1,000 followers after this. So
Okay. We'll push your account either way. So how are you
okay.
doing
I'm
today?
I'm old I'm old school. I have lots of followers on Facebook and Insta and Twitter or X. So TikTok is a new format that I'm still getting used to. But I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really great. I had just like a very busy morning, just trying to get ready and get everything ready and do as much research and be as well prepared as I can.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm actually nervous. I changed my shirt like 5 times, so I thought I'm just gonna get comfortable and 'cause I'm standing in my living room, so
Oh,
I
should we
just
have
took
done an
off my
outfit check beforehand?
work shirt. Yeah, I just had a work shirt. I'm like, nah, I'll just be comfortable and do this. So I got a hoodie and ready to go.
I feel like I should have stayed in my hoodie. Oh, that's okay.
Oh, you look beautiful anyway.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So, should we I feel like I just want to like build a rapport and get to know you first. You have been such an idol of mine because like your transition has just been so amazing and your career has just been so amazing to follow and watch. And you're a very strong indigenous woman who, stands up against in the boys club, so to speak. So I highly admire that. So how was that like your transition from journalism to politics?
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really nice of you to say. I am definitely feeling the effects of having been in something for so long. Because sometimes when you're in something, you don't know how long you've been in it. So when I look back, I started in my journalism career officially probably 2000 and when 9/11 hit, 2001, I guess. I was in school for radio broadcasting, and then I eventually went into training for TV and journalism. And before that, though, it's been a lifelong dream of mine since I could remember that I wanted to be on TV telling stories and introducing stories. So it's been a beautiful experience, even though it didn't always feel beautiful. But when I look back, I'm very grateful for my time as a journalist, and I look forward to you as a budding journalist and lots of others behind catching up really fast on how journalism works and why it's important. And then the transition into leadership, it almost felt like a natural transition. It wasn't something that I was pursuing or thinking that I could do or wanted to do in my life. But the reality is you get called into different arenas that you don't even know sometimes. And so gifts that we all have pull us in and make room for us. And I believe that's what happened. People saw leadership qualities in me, and being able to understand multiple issues all at once and being able to research and get information about things is one big part of leadership. And so the journalism work and presentation skills also helped. So it was a good natural fit. It doesn't always happen, and it's hard to go back the other way to journalism once you've gone on the other side. But here we are.
Yeah, so I guess that that's what first caught my eye about you was when you were in journalism and you were so quotable and so strong and you were so articulate and well researched and you were kind of ballsy in the way that you weren't afraid to say what you thought. And so I feel like going into politics and leadership was the natural progression for you. So what are your next steps? Like, what are your future plans?
Well, for the time being, I'm going back to work with the International Commission on Missing Persons. They're the organization that is dedicated solely to finding missing people around the world due to disasters, organized crime, even, and wars. They're in Ukraine right now, for example. They're in Syria and Vietnam. They do searching of unmarked graves, mass graves, and they work with communities and civil societies to identify people in unmarked graves. So they were called to Canada by chiefs to come and work on the issue of unmarked graves here in Canada. So I'll be going back to work with them as one of their leads, well, their lead for the work here in Canada. So we just started about a year ago, just almost a year ago, and we're in the relationship building phase. We're still working out a lot of the kinks and dealing with a lot of different concerns, that arise from doing anything new. So I'll be going back to that, and I have other few projects that I'm also working on that I hope to talk about pretty soon.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
That's so interesting, and that's so muchly needed right now in Canada, like the reconciliation and the search of the unmarked graves, and just answers needed for survivors, right? Um,
Mhm.
so my next question. So what are your thoughts on, like, I always saw you as being like a lifelong kind of politician now, and I guess that's not how it always works. But what are your thoughts on indigenous politics versus like mainstream politics? Like, would you ever join a mainstream?
Well, I almost did. I was near the verge. I passed the tests, as they call it, and even the green light, because again, I was asked to do that by when elders and knowledge keepers ask me to do it and other leaders, then I take a very serious consideration to do it, and that's what happened at this time as well. So I did, but I decided against it in the end because I feel like Indigenous, our First Nations issues are still so unresolved that it still needs the effort of our own people to keep pushing the envelope and to keep making those calls for change. And so I decided to stay with, answering the call to run as chief and grand chief positions. And even though they were difficult runs, and even though there was many things against me, um, I chose it. And sometimes when I describe the situation or the work, I call it hugging a porcupine. Because sometimes that's what it feels like. Because like you're asked to help, but then sometimes it gets very prickly. But you do it anyway because our people need us and our people want us. And even though we have differences, we still have to find a way to move forward and do our best.
Well, yeah, and you talked about that in your book, like the toxic work environment and the boys' club
Mm.
mentality. And so I thought, like, what are your thoughts against the mainstream politics versus the indigenous politics? May I ask what party?
No. You could ask, but I won't tell you.
Me being curious. Okay.
And it wasn't because I chose this party for its necessarily what I chose, because I always, again, I dislike them all equally, and I like them all equally. So I think there's something good in each of the parties, but and even when I'm voting, I vote strategically. And when I participate, when I decided to, because all the parties have asked me to run into different provincial and federal elections. But I was trying to be strategic on where our people would be mostly positively impacted. And so that was that. It wasn't because I'm a party person, and journalism actually teaches you that, to try and be as neutral as you can. And so it's kind of my second nature to try and be neutral all the time.
Yeah, I have a really hard time being nonpartisan. Like I want to
Uh-huh.
be political, but at the same time, um, indigenous politics come first, like you say, and our issues come first, and our issues supersede any political party, because no political party is tailored to our issues, right? So it's, you
Hmm.
have to pick either or, unfortunately. Um, okay, we
And I'll
do
have to
have, sorry.
So I was just want to say one more thing. I do admire and value people that do go into these party politics, though. It takes a lot of strength and a lot of courage. And one of my heroes is the late Elijah Harper, and he chose to run for two parties. And so I respect people that do. I'm not saying that I'll never, because I never say never. It's just more pull for you when you say never. So I have to just be quiet about that.
Come back and bite you after.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we have a question. If you have any concerns for the newly elected chief, and would you say that Cindy will uphold our people in a good way? And if so, why do you think she will?
Like many of us, I'm hoping that she will. I trust that she will. I trust that she wants to. So I'm going to wish her well and give it the benefit of the doubt that that's what's going to happen. That's really all I could say about that.
Yeah, I guess I kind of jump forward. I was kind of trying to ease us into the AFN
That's okay.
election. It's such a hot topic this week. So
Hmm.
many conflicting conversations, but so much interesting dialogue as well. Um, so may I ask, why did you support David Pratt over Cindy Woodhouse?
He asked me. He was the one that asked me directly, and he asked me first. Some of the other candidates did, but he was the first one. And she never actually did. A couple of people from her camp did, but she never asked me directly. So that was a big consideration, and that was the biggest part. But also because I was able to convey to David Pratt what I was hoping for if I supported him, and one of them was to make sure that Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited people are always respected at every AFN meeting. And so I wanted that commitment from anyone that I had supported. And so I was able to convey that to him. I wasn't able to have that conversation with Cindy because she didn't ask, and I would have asked for the same thing. But that's just how it ended, was that he asked me first, and I wanted something that I could put a lot of hope in, and that was that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were surprised at your support because, like, well, I can see the communication barrier being, a big reason. Personally, that would affect me as well. But like, I think a lot of people expected you to support her because she was not only local to your area, she was the only other female candidate, yada, yada, yada. But I totally respect that. Now, with all the fighting that's been going on in the AFN, there hasn't been much progress towards like our legislation and towards First Nation issues, and even conversations happening. So people are questioning the AFN as a relevant organization and are questioning the future of them as a relevant organization. And what are your thoughts on that?
It is something that even the chiefs across Canada have been talking to us about as candidates. At different forums that we've had with chiefs, they have asked the same thing. So it's very reflective of what grassroots are feeling across Canada. There's still even talk after the post-election, people saying, is it even relevant anymore? Is it really doing what it needs to be doing now at this time? And 20, 30 years ago, when they first um, you know, erected the AFN, it was to advocate and lobby the federal government on common issues. But there are so many now nations that speak on their own. There are many nations that are able to be effective in raising the concerns that they see. So there's that. But I think AFN does have a role in a way that you can bring the common issues together to at least find common ground with each other as a First Nations family. That's one thing I learned from one of the regional chiefs, actually, who's a grand chief in his territory, who always encouraged me. He called me almost every day the last 2 weeks. I miss his calls now. Well, every other day. And he always reminded me that we are a family, no matter what, no matter how difficult the relationships are, we are a family and we have to look at our nations as that. And so that's how I chose to look at it. And I wanted to make sure that I expressed that I don't discount the feeling that people are feeling disillusioned by AFN, but I think at the basic level, I wanted to bring a sense of unity, that there would be a sense of unity if I was going to take over the organization as a national chief. And I expressed that at every single forum that I spoke at. And it was good to see actually the new national chief, Cindy. That was the first question she was asked, what her first priority is, and she said unity. So I'm glad that at least it got to that level, and I hope and I pray that, at some sense that it gets to that point for AFN, so it can
Hmm.
be relevant again in some way.
Yeah, and that really resonated with me, that the AFN isn't an organization for the chiefs, and that the chiefs are supposed to be working for the people. Like I really and a lot of people feel that. And I was also reading today about like the voting system, how the votings are, how it's dispersed, because some nations have, a population of like 50,000 people, and yet they've only got a few chiefs, so they've only got 3 or 4 votes to represent that many people. So I think a step forward, if we're going to actually look at meaningful change within the organization, is looking at that voting system and making it more equitable, like other organizations like Saskatchewan have. But
Mhm.
that wasn't a question, sorry.
No, that's a good point. That's a really good point, because that is something that is possible. We know that technology allows that to happen now. And it is a discussion that many, many people are having. Should we open the vote? And also, is the vote representative? It's one chief, one vote. And you're right, there are communities that have 10,000 members, 20,000 members, I think is one of them. But they still only get one vote, whereas a community with 50 members, they also still get one vote. And there's question of whether that's still the right process. So I think there is a revisions in studies that were done recently that would allow the changeover to have representation by population. So I think that's still an opportunity that people and the AFN and chiefs can still pursue. And I know that there's a lot of interest in doing that, and it would make sense. This, if we learned anything from the online voting, is that you can vote from anywhere and allow as many people as you want to in there. I'm still not sure how, if it's full, if it's completely safe. I'm still not convinced it's completely what it should be, but it's still a useful tool to have, be able to reach multiple people, because I think that was always one of the factors, is cost. How are you going to hold a vote with with that many people across Canada? Although we see it at the federal and provincial levels all the time,
Hmm.
but the question was always about cost as well. So,
Well, and the
talk to.
cost, that was a huge issue this time, especially with people questioning whether or not an audit, um,
Mm.
versus an election. Like, wouldn't an election cost more than just getting the audit over and done with? And I feel like another direction we should be looking into is doing a virtual, like infallible, work on the system and work on working out the bugs, but a virtual system rather than having everybody travel, because like we're in the age of
Hmm.
technology that we didn't have to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars for everybody to
Yeah,
come down physically when you could,
yeah.
virtually do it, right? We
It's a
do
good
have,
point because Chiefs did say, why did I bother coming all the way here when if I had known I could have stayed home and keep working or be with my people, I would have stayed home. So that was a question that we did hear, and I'm not sure why that wasn't made clear to them before. Maybe it was, but it definitely didn't hit home with everybody. So again, they need to work out the bugs and figure out better systems. Like even the speeches that we did, there wasn't that many people there. It was a smattering of Chiefs. There was a lot of empty spaces in the Chiefs tables. And even in the back, I think there was more of our own supporters and our own families that were there in the back in the viewing section. But there wasn't a lot of Chiefs. When I stood up there for my concession speech, the whole front and the whole area where the Chiefs sit was packed. And so I wish that we would have had seen that on that day, but the timing was weird too, like 5:30 p.m. And we were supposed to have Q&A until 9 p.m. But there was a hockey game on as well. I know a lot of the leadership and a lot of people went to the hockey game. And why wouldn't you? Well, would you rather go to a hockey game than listen to a bunch of speeches? Um,
that are
so that was a
pre-recorded that you can
factor.
watch later. Like you don't have to
Yeah,
watch it live.
yeah. So yeah, lots of bugs to fix.
Okay, we have a question. What would you do to decolonize the AFN in a whole? And do you believe this is a system for the people? I think we've already kind of, and I personally think it'll never be for the people, but I respect. Okay, so I think we're just going to focus on the first question. So what would you do to decolonize the AFN as a whole?
Well, I think talking to and reconnecting with our own people would have been a really good initiative, which is something that I talked to chiefs about at different forums. And I think that, getting a sense of who we are, where we are at this moment in our lives would have been a good reality check for all of us, not just us as our own nations, but for the rest of Canada. I think that we don't have a clear picture at the moment of our crises. It's gotten worse, I think, before the pandemic and before this financial crisis that we're seeing across the world. We were already living in abject poverty in our own nations, and I think it's gotten worse. We're hearing opioid crises everywhere. We just saw yesterday, I believe, one of the nations in Ontario declaring a state of emergency because of the opioid crisis. And so I think that grassroots and getting back to the basics, reconnecting with our own people, and getting a sense of where we are and what we need would have been a good initiative. And of course, bringing in elders' knowledge, in knowledge keepers, and then young people as well. I was really impressed with young people who pulled us aside after the AFN forum that we had, the official forum, and the lights went down, all the cameras went off, all the camera people left, almost everybody left, but a few young people stuck behind, and we gathered around and we answered their questions. And so I think more of those organic conversations need to happen.
Well, yeah,
And
and just sorry.
sorry, I should also say that, not every chief that was there in Ottawa was at, of course, the hockey game. There was still people that were still getting there the next day that they couldn't get their suitor. So it's not that the Chiefs, completely didn't come. There was different situations. So
Well,
just to
yeah,
clarify.
and I know even when the rounds went into like the sixth round, like Chiefs had scheduled flights to leave and
Hmm.
had to disperse, and so it's one of those
Yeah.
things that you don't plan for, this length of time, right?
Yeah. No. No.
I really like that grassroots reconnection because That was a comment I kept hearing over and over, was like, not only was it like the need for virtual voting, but like, why are we spending thousands of dollars on a new election when your own people, are starving and don't have clean
Mhm.
water and are living in these, conditions? And a lot of people just feel completely defeated because there is such a disconnect between like the chief and council and their own people sometimes. So I think that reconnecting and actually listening to what your people have to say is just so important to get back to.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
what were your thoughts on a financial audit? How did you feel about that?
Well, you know what? It was a situation that I faced when I became the MKO Grand Chief in 2015. Very similar, different scale, of course. Our organization, MKO, at the time was facing a lot of criticism, but also lots of financial instability and even accusation of, impropriety and people there was a lot of accusations like that and innuendos. So what I chose to do in the end, and this is where my journalism background came into play, is, I didn't want to create and further divide what our people were seeing and feeling and hearing of MKO. I didn't think that it was very encouraging to see all of that because people were feeling disillusioned and feeling like if our leaders are not, they were cast in a negative light. So it impacts people I know on the ground. And so I wanted to make sure that at least we addressed what was going on and talk about the realities, bring in the moose in the room and just talk about what the reality is and what actually happened, and then start to clear the air. So we did that at MKO. We talked about what happened, how did the organization get to that level, what were the actual wrongdoings, and then give people an opportunity to talk about it. I think the intentions were good for people at the time because they were doing the best they could. And so there was a little bit of a portrayal that that the organization was trying to be, you know, um, unruly. But it really wasn't. I think there was a lot of room for mistakes. We had to strengthen policies, we had to strengthen procedures, and we had to go back to basics and strengthen that and our understandings, and even work with the funders, the federal government, and find out where the holes are there as well, because they're not perfect either, and their processes are definitely not perfect. So in some cases they were, organizations like this are set up to fail because there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity. Like even the AFN elections itself, for example, like when we talk about chiefs that are or supporters, they talk about you have to have a good standing. So whose definition is that? So there's a lot of gray areas that needs to be addressed. So financial audit, I definitely would have liked the opportunity to see internally what was there before I try to come up with, any concrete verbiage from there, because I would want to see what was the actual story and who was involved and what was federal government's role in it. Maybe they needed a forensic audit in their part, and so I think that there was a lot of unanswered questions that I would have wanted to take internally, because outside the narrative would have reinforced the negative stereotypes about who our people are, who our leaders are. And I think good, and it was good for MKO, for us at the time, and we'll see what happens with this AFN with that.
Yeah, let's hope so. And that's where a lot of, the rumors come in, is like people just don't know. There's the
Mhm.
unanswered questions, there is that disconnect. And so I really love how you just took it back a step and we're just like, no, we're going to just break it down. We're going to, show you guys how we got to this point and, how we can improve. And I really love that. Um, I think that was all my questions.
Excellent.
You did it.
Well, thank you. I'm really honored to be interviewed by you. I hope that You keep going because you have a lot of strengths, a lot of followers too, and we need influencers like you to keep the conversations moving and going. And I will say one thing that I'm starting to share a lot these days is, my dream to become a journalist was a dream that I had since I was very young. I'm If I flip over my little camera here, you'd see I have CBC all the time or CTV. I'm a news junkie and I watch news all the time, even though we don't see it on Facebook anymore. I'm still a news junkie since I was very young. So my dad was always like that too. Current affairs, politics, all these things that he taught me to pay attention. And I did. So I wanted to be a journalist. And so when I did finally become a journalist, my ultimate dream was to host a television show, which I ended up doing before I ran again for AMC. So the first day I sat in the anchor chair to host a CBC late night show, my mind was like, it was like it was just a little show, a 10-minute show, but to me it was amazing because I realized my dream. And when I look back at it now, though, I look behind and see where my dream brought me. I have to say my dream kept me alive. Like there was moments where I thought I was going to die because of different situations, mostly domestic violence from my ex and being a victim of just perpetrators trying to take me off the street when I was young. Situations like that and even low moments when I had no money, not even coffee money when I was going to college to take journalism. And I still had my kids in tow. I was married at the time, but we had no money. And as many times I wanted to quit and just die, and I don't want to say I was suicidal, but sometimes it felt like I wanted to give up. But, the dream of being a journalist and just the dream itself kept me alive. So I look at it now as a lifeline. The dreams that we have individually as people, I realize now they're meant to motivate us, to keep us going, and if you keep hope alive and if you keep your dream alive, it'll take you through many things. And that's what I've learned. It almost like a rope from my birth to now that my dream of journalism kept me alive. Now that I've passed it and realized that I realized my dream, I can definitely say that my dreams kept me alive. And so I look forward to wherever they take me now. And I just want to express to people that don't give up. Just keep going. You're there for a reason, and your gifts will make room for you.
Just hang on to your purpose. I love that.
Hmm.
I love that. Miigwech for sharing that. Um, I actually really needed to hear that.
Good.
Yeah, just this transition from being an educator and trying to be a journalist. It has been it has been difficult, and there's been times where I keep doubting myself. Um, but I just feel like teaching children and just like educating people has always been my dream. So I feel like journalism is a next progression, right? It's still teaching people, it's still reaching um, various ages, like different platforms. Like, yeah, that's just
Yeah, yeah. And doing all that good work as well as, it is a fun industry once you get into it, once you know the ways of the trade, like any trade. It becomes fun. It's not always doom and gloom. The stories aren't always heavy. I got to meet many crazy people along the way, like Celine Dion and I don't know who else. Oh, I went to Toronto and the little girl, internet sensation there. She sang for oh my God, Maria, official Maria. She sang Lady Gaga song. I was there. Yeah, yeah. So I got to see and do some interesting things, and it was fun. I'll give you one impression of Celine Dion when well, cameraman, the technicians are so fun. In every place I worked in, technicians are always fun, and they always save the day at the end of the day if you find a good technician, camera or sound people. And we went to see Celine Dion, and after we left, she has a strong, beautiful French accent, of course, and my camera guy at the time, Jason, we left and he said, I think she said, this is what Jason said. I think she said, what a pleasure for you to meet me. So I use that line every once in a while to be a little jerk. So you
It's
can
such
use
a
that line to people.
it's such a backhanded compliment. I love it.
Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure for you to meet me. You're welcome. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, well, miigwech, and this has been such an honor. Thank you so much for being my first interview.
For me too. Thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, hope your day is awesome.
You too. Bye. Ekuse.
Bye.